Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Nick, and today we are talking about creating space.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Well, hello, Kisma.
Hello, what's going on over there as I boomerang you on Instagram right at this moment?
Should I move so that it boomerangs in a cool way?
Isn't it fascinating what we're doing, like with our phones and like whoever would have thought we'd be obsessed with these like back and forth, your head's just bobbing like they do in India, the head bobble. You're doing that through the boomerang. It's hilarious. Technology
is just so cool and so ridiculous and absurd at the same time. It's really
Obsessed.
fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I'm loving it. So
yeah, what's going on over there?
Well, lots of things. I mean, creating space. I've been a fan of the getting things done system.
You are. You're going straight through that, man. That's intense.
It's fairly intense. Yeah, it really is. I don't know that it's for everybody, but for everything that I'm working on right now, it seems appropriate to have a really solid system behind it. And
I would say so.
I'm going to have some extreme ownership here, and I am wearing my Jocko shirt today.
Awesome.
Shout out to the Jocko podcast. But yeah, if I'm going to have some extreme ownership over that, my systems are not the greatest right now, and but they're improving. This system
I would say they're improving.
Yeah, it's improved a ton since I started this, and I'm going to take another big swipe at it tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited.
Good.
What else has been happening? Tons of new clients.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of like healing clients, energy work, coaching. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it is very exciting.
What do you feel the main thing that people are showing up to you with that they're wanting to solve and resolve?
It's been a pretty wide array for sure. But we've really seen a lot of the things around success and career and moving forward with it in different ways. And it's really interesting that you asked that, 'cause one of the most common themes that I've been hearing recently is, man, like, what if I do all this and it fails? It's like all that.
I understand that feeling.
Effort. Yeah, totally. Like all that effort was for nothing, you know?
But that's an untrue statement.
Well, it is, but that's the story. That's
the story.
You know?
That's
so it's
a
been
story.
fun to unwind that.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about it is that everybody's got that wrapped up in them in a unique way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, a really kind of a cool way to segue to our topic about creating space, because we have an interesting announcement to make to our listeners. And I suppose it's one that you and I could be diving into. Oh my gosh, what if this is the wrong decision and we fail and etc.
Yeah.
But we have full trust in how the universe plays out and what we put in. So we're pretty stoked about it.
Yeah.
And that announcement is that we're taking a pause from recording new episodes for about 6 weeks. So like a chunk of the summer, we're just going to be devoting to our own study, our own clients. I've got the Karma Money Cleanse that I'm creating, and you've got some energy mastery trains. It just felt like the right time to pause.
Yeah.
And to create space.
Yeah, I'd agree. And for various reasons. I mean, well, let's be honest. Back in when we very first started the podcast, remember, like there would be times when we would go,
we're going to stop.
Yeah. Or no. Well, yes, there were definitely times when we wanted to just stop. But there were other times when we would go, several weeks without recording a new episode and getting it out. Like we have not been like clockwork.
Oh, really?
No, not from the beginning.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I thought we were pretty awesome. Well, we have different perceptions.
We were pretty good, but I remember there was a few times.
There was a few, but we've been like, this is episode, 162 or something, like, I don't know. I feel like we've been week after week, we've had a new podcast, and it's a blast. We love it. It's the theme, creating space. And so what we wanted to share with all of you listeners is how this applies at the macro and the micro. So for us, it was like, okay, what do we need to make the podcast even more awesome, to give it some more zest, to be dedicated to marketing it more. And it was space. It was like a breath. It was a pause, but not a full stop.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really important to know. The difference is that there are things that could be happening in your life, in your business, that you say, I'm going to pause, I'm going to take a breath, but it doesn't mean that you're stopping.
Yeah. I want to dive into that in more depth for sure, because that's actually a very important conversation. But to share as well is like, we had a conversation about it of like, kind of a come to, like a heart to heart between the two of us is like, all right, when we were talking about taking a pause, it's like to have that honest part of it that says, do we want to take a pause or do we want to stop?
Yeah.
And I love
I know.
This is truly one of my favorite things to do. Like, I love sitting down and having these conversations with you. I love that people get to listen in on it.
Right.
And I love the listeners that chime back in and talk to us about like, oh, and then I was listening to your podcast and I heard you say this. And it's just the coolest thing. Like, I just love the conversation that we have. And so I don't want to stop at all.
Right.
But I think it's fair to say that, was it Swamiji? We used to talk about this too, where you need an injection of new information to stimulate things. And we're consistently studying
always
learning and doing new things. If I'm going to speak just for myself, not for you, but just for me, is I don't always give myself the space to really like fully let that settle and land. It's very much like on to the next thing, which is super fun because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And also I think creatively can actually do the opposite and
for sure.
not allow the space for the real spark to come through.
I agree. I really agree. And, it's like new information, a new awareness, a new perspective. And sometimes I know as well, the thing that I was looking at is I get invited on other podcasts and sometimes I just don't even respond because I look at my schedule. I'm like, where is that going to go? And so I'm hoping that I can reach out and be on the other side of the mic for a few other podcasts while we're on our little pause break. And in my business, I'm restructuring some things. So I'm creating more space where we can, batch a whole bunch of podcasts in one day or whatever. So it's really exciting. And sometimes it's like when one is reorganizing and creating more space, you just have to like lean back and look at it all and take that higher vision and see what needs to happen and where the players need to move, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And for all the listeners out there, we're certainly open to what you have to say. I can tell you that one of the things that I've really enjoyed is the series. We really kind of kicked it off with that working with the law series.
Yeah,
I love that. Like
that was a great series. I mean, if you want to go back and listen, start I think it's around 123.
Yeah, I love the series and the mini series. It's just something I've really enjoyed because it gives us more time and space to unpack a conversation and to look at it from a few different angles. And I think that kind of dialogue and also that kind of shifting perspective is a really valuable thing to really get to some deeper layers of some of the things.
For sure.
Some of the topics.
So I know you wanted to talk about not stopping. There's a teaching that I wanted to bring in regarding this creating space and why it's so essential. If you think about like just, again, going to the absolute and the higher level, just back to that teaching on meditation and Om. And, that meditation of Om and then silence, Om and then silence. And the Bhagavad Gita clearly states, in between the Oms, you'll find your true self. It lies there. And in between those Oms is space and silence. And it's like sometimes we need to take that absolute and bring it down into our life without fear. Which leads me to this creative mind versus competitive mind. So we could have gotten really nervous and be like, oh man, everyone's launching podcasts. So we got to just crank it out. Like that's just not how we operate. It's certainly not how the universe responds. So it was us using our creative mind to continue that life force expansion of the podcast and of our own businesses, which meant we need to breathe a little bit. We need to look in between and really see what's the truth, where's the podcast going, who's it going to serve, etc.
Yeah. And I think those are all really important questions. It's obviously been a huge evolution from when we started it.
Kisman the Dark Yogi.
Kisman the Dark Yogi, and very yoga centric at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
As we were transitioning out of that world to what it is today, which I love the direction that it's taking, and I think it's appropriate to have a little bit of space to really formulate that in a more clear way.
For sure.
So quitting.
Yeah. What does that mean when people quit?
Well, that's the thing, right? And quitting is a conversation that's so important because it shows up in unexpected ways. So there's the absolute, you can look at it from the absolute perspective, which is like, all right, you really only ever quit something when you just give it up for good.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you fail and you take a pause. Okay, well, that's one thing. But lots of times that quitting really shows up. It shows up first in all the little ways. We start to get, well, really, we talked about it in the cheese episode, the true confession of the little quits of stopping this, stopping that, not following through on this, not following
getting
through on
prideful.
Yep. Little messes starting to arise here and there, things getting congested. And before you know it, you have a really, really big problem. That's one way of quitting. There's people quit in really big, grand ways.
People quit living.
They do. Yeah. And I want to definitely get to that. But one of the ones that I see where people get frustrated with Facebook and then they do the big grand exit.
And they could have just paused for 30 days.
You could just pause.
You can pause a lot of people. You know that, right? Like pause.
I've been loving that feature.
Yeah.
Snoozing for 30 days.
It's the snooze.
And then all of a sudden it's like I'll go through a wave of it and then a bunch of the folks will creep back in and I'll see the same conversations.
Yeah.
And that's when I know it's like, okay, like you're still having the same conversation that is totally unproductive and just something I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
You go be awesome and I'm unfollowing you.
Yeah. That's fair. Right.
Yeah. But they do the big quit, and people do that in business too. I just need to get out of here and I'm going to shut down my business for 30 days and then I'm going to hit the reset button and it's just a big old quit, man.
Yeah. And once things stop, and this is where I want to talk about the difference between pausing and gathering whatever it is, information, energy, resources towards the very thing that you're pausing. And stopping, man, the wheels stop. It's like it starts to sink into quicksand. And when you start to get going again, it is very slow.
Yeah.
It is very slow. Where when you express it as space, right? When you're taking space, you know that you're nourishing, you're feeding. There's a reason you're creating space. And so that essence or that entity of wherever you're taking space, it's always moving. It continues to be fed. Because we'll be studying other podcasts, we'll be doing our thing, we'll be having powwow sessions and outlining the whole whatever 3 months before we come back. So there's a lot of work being put to it. It's not like, oh, let's never think about this for 6 weeks and then start up again.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. And then 6 weeks becomes 6 months.
Right.
And it never happens.
Right.
Right. Because then all the energy that was behind it is just gone. I was with a client in a VIP day the other day and he put it really well. He's like, if you've got something that you're inspired about and you put it on a list and you haven't taken any action on that in 48 hours, it's
the fast
tricky.
action.
He's like, there's something that gets lost in that. It's part of something that he does. And I thought, that's really accurate. I hadn't really heard it put quite that way.
Yeah.
Before.
48 hours is good. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's right, and he's right about the timeline too. It's like, that's stretching it.
It's stretching. And even, I think, again, the action could be I'm putting on my calendar when I start to write the book that I think, was the big idea or something, but I love that. So quitting, stopping.
Yeah. And then that's a quit where it's like, oh, I'm just going to stop all of this and I'm going to totally change. I'm going to only do this. And that's, just to differentiate for people when using ourselves as an example, our businesses and our work is continuing in all throughout this.
Right.
And this is one particular project, and it's one that's near and dear to us, but it's one particular project that I think just needs a little bit of space to kind of find,
to breathe, gather
to breathe
some awesomeness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm excited about what will occur in the meantime.
Me too. Well, let's kind of move it to this creating space of where others can create space. So if we look at life, we've got things like relationships, we have things like places where people live, habits, it's food, diet. There's a whole bunch of things where sometimes when we kind of pattern interrupt it with space, it can actually make things better.
Yeah.
Because what I see that happens a lot with people that come to me is like they keep regurgitating the same ideas, thoughts, actions, energy. And so, of course, they're creating the same result, which is the very result that they don't want or says driving them crazy, etc. So when you think about it, I'm just going to pattern interrupt this with space. What is that? Is it that, if you're working on a relationship that you actually are gone one day a week completely by yourself? Or do you sleep in separate bedrooms for 3 nights of the week? Or do you go on a vacation? Like there's so many ways to create space.
Yeah.
And I think the courage to do it and not worry what anybody thinks is really important. That's the trust piece.
Yeah.
Creating space really needs trust to make it work.
Yeah, it really does. There's so many ideas around that have negative connotations.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that we've been trained to operate like machines and to believe that that's how we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
The internet and our electronics are always on. We're more accessible than ever. It's always on. This is a super common problem with people in their careers is that, they get a great job, but then, the company expects them to be accessible 24/7. And then, or they feel like they have to prove themselves and do that.
Yeah.
And so they wind up being always on, always on, always on. It's funny, this is way back in the day. I learned something from watching Indiana Jones that just really stuck with me. The third one, what was it? The Last Crusade. And it was a trick that just always worked. And I would throw it out to my friends and they'd laugh at me, but then they'd try it and it always worked. And it was when they were looking for the thing. And Sean Connery, who's the senior Dr. Jones, he sits in the chairs and he says, I don't remember his exact quote. He's like, if I just sit back, the problem presents itself. And he sits back in the chair and it opens up the trap door.
I love it.
It's so great. But how that translated in my brain was the answer will always come to a quiet mind.
It will always. That's so good. It's absolutely true. It'll come to a quiet mind. I mean, this is why some of the most successful people, such as Bill Gates, he takes a week out in the woods in a cabin twice a year. And the only person that sees him is like some assistant that brings food.
That's so
awesome. Talk about creating space, right?
Yeah.
And this is it. This is the essence is like, if we want those answers, if we want those downloads, if we want to feel different or do something different, we've got to allow room to make that happen.
Yeah.
You mentioned phones. What would happen, everyone, if one day a week, you turned off your phone? I guarantee the mind would settle down. There'd be more creativity. There wouldn't be that addiction. It's like what's in the news, what's on Facebook, what's on Instagram. The algorithms are set for us to open Facebook. And then there's just like a couple of seconds where we're waiting to see the notifications. They have it down.
That's
Turn
hilarious.
off
It's true.
the phone.
There's that little pause and you're like, how many notifications?
Exactly. Turn off the phone. One day a week, try it. And this is where it becomes really fun. All the little areas in your life or in your business where you can create space and have this really juicy pattern interrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Some of my favorite days have been when my phone was broken and
right?
It's in the Apple store to be fixed.
And all of a sudden you're like, I think I'll pick it up like 3 days from now.
I want to put that Bill Gates thing on my life goals, though. That's pretty awesome.
Well, when we're looking like now as we're planning our separate businesses, our podcast together, this is when I know in the 2-year plan, there's going to be way more space for me to like either be in India or like off the grid or something. You really do have to plan for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you can live by the seat of your pants and I think that'll work to a certain level, but to do and achieve what we want to achieve, it won't work at that level.
Right.
There needs to be other things in place that will really keep keep everything in motion.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. Like, I think that's awesome. I'm super excited about it.
The other thing, when I look at the prosperity code and my new training, Karma Money Cleanse, and of course, if you're interested in that, just email me, kismetsourcemovement.com. But as, my clients and students and I work through these universal laws and how to manifest, you need space. You need a quiet mind. There needs to be such an ability to drop in and remove all the anxiety and the doubt and all of that and really understand the opulence and the miracles around you so that those can be attracted in. And sometimes you need the space. Go out and take a walk in Mother Nature. Notice the flowers, notice the mountains or the ocean, wherever you are. Absorb that, bring that in at a cellular level. That's using the creative mind to really shift the essence.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people just on a daily basis, it's so easy to get so busy that you just don't even pay attention to what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
Like your head is always in the next thing and the next thing. And if you're not paying attention to, well, what are the conversations around those things? Then it's really easy for that to build up. So that kind of brings us back to that piece of, well, if you look around in your life, where are the areas that you feel congested or you feel stopped or stuck and that you're just kind of rushing and not giving yourself any time?
Right.
Is it a project? Is it a relationship that you feel like you've just been butting your head against the wall and having the same conversations again and again?
Is it a diet? Is it exercise? Is it, money, prosperity?
Doing the same things. And it's like it's almost like we feel good being able to check it off the box because we did the thing. But if you're just doing the same thing and getting the same results, like, well, why are you even doing that?
Right.
If that's the result you want, great, like keep doing it. But mostly people want improvement. They want growth and expansion. I'm pretty sure that's, our audience and our listeners really do. And so it does require that constant process of refining.
Right.
Little ways to do things and to tweak things and to play the game of it,
So an exercise I thought about that would be fun for everyone. If you're looking to create space, if you're like, oh, this is intriguing, the creative mind, creating space, pausing, grab a journal and take some time at least once a week to not journal the negative stuff, but write about what it is you do want to create. I'm a big fan of getting from the mind, the hand, pen to paper, what it is you want to see, getting that vision embedded. And as you write, that first is creating space. Turn off the TV, little pattern interrupt, and then begin to ask, go through the different pieces of your dream or your vision. Where do you need to breathe more, allow more space, allow more magic in, and just kind of lean back and have that expectation that it's all going to work perfectly. That's the tricky one. But, in the essence of manifestation, we have interest in something and then we put attention to it. So we're seeing it, we're taking action, we're being it. But then we expect, and that's when we lean back and we draw it in. And that also means we're allowing the space to receive it.
Yeah.
Because if we're in that frantic motion and we're not breathing and we're not aware and we're not present, forget it. It doesn't show up. We don't see it.
Yeah.
So allowing the space is also allowing that trust in the vision and the receptivity.
Yeah, that's a great exercise.
Yeah. So I'm excited, when we come back to hear what everyone's been manifesting and working on and all sorts of things.
Yeah. I'm excited to give an update on my Getting Things Done system.
Getting things done. That'll be, yeah. You'll have the world done by then.
I hope so. Yeah. I can't wait to see.
I don't know if I'll start that book. I'm afraid it might implode me.
Well, you have some other really good systems in place. And you've studied some other stuff. I haven't done any of that. Every system that I have is something I just kind of made up or adopted along the way. And it's worked pretty well, but it's at a point where it's not. It needs better. It needs to be better.
It needs to be better and it's really getting better. So, and that's a great demonstration. You took space to implement that.
I had to, yeah.
You had to take space to implement that.
And I didn't really do it I didn't do it the right way. So this is, if anybody gets into that book, so here's my recommendation.
Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yeah. The first section is really conceptual. So, and that's where I got super fired up and I was like, oh, I get it. And I just started and I did, and I implemented it to a degree and I did pretty well. But then I got to the second section of the book and it's like, oh, here's how you do it. And so,
there should be warning. Don't start until the second half of the book.
And there was, and I just read it and I got too excited. I don't even remember. But then for anybody who's reading it, when you get to the second section of the book, he will walk you through it step by step.
That's cool.
And the recommendation is to really do one good swipe. And I did a pretty good swipe and now I'm ready to take another step.
Nice. Good for you.
So I'm excited. But I want to close this out with one last part of this that I think is really important, where people assume that changing their external world is going to change their internal world. And it's like, okay, well, if I clean up all these things and it'll make me feel better, and it will for a minute.
It will.
And that's true.
Clearing clutter makes you feel better.
Yeah. But it really does come down to the internal work, because when your internal mind and emotions and energy are really cleaned up, the external can be whatever it is, and you can manage it so much more easily, and it will find a natural order.
That's true.
That's in correspondence that's going on with the inside.
Yeah, that's really true. Once we're clean and clear internally, that's like we start doing things externally to keep that frequency alive. For sure. It's just much more rapid and much more fluid when we do the internal work.
It really is.
Instead of forcing the external, because then something breaks and we're like, it didn't work or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and I say that just to really be true to what the whole journey is about. You know, yes, there's external things that need to be cleaned up. If you got clutter all over your place, you need to clean that up.
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah.
You know, you really do, because it's going to weigh on your mind. Why? Because you're a human being. You're a human being in a human experience, and we're not enlightened sages yet. You know, working on it, maybe one day. But for now, in our human place, you know, we really do need to address the external and create something there that will support the work that we do on the internal.
Yes.
And vice versa, to do the work on the internal that will continue to harmonize. And I think in a certain way, sensitize us to the things that are in disharmony or stuck around us, so that there can be more ease and flow around that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so here's to each and every one of you. Thank you for listening. Whether this is the first podcast, this is your first Illumination podcast, go back. There's so many good ones. Just start running in reverse. And if you've been with us for a while, as so many of you are, thank you. Thank you. We adore you. And we will be back with some pretty exciting content and some guests and just kind of a new vibe.
A new vibe. Yeah.
A new vibe for our tribe.
Yep. Very excited about that. If in the meantime you think of something, maybe there's topics that you want us to cover, or maybe you've got a suggestion about the show, or just something that's been on your mind. It'd be so cool if you guys did this. Send it to info@sourcemovement.com. We truly would love to hear from you and embrace it with open arms.
Absolutely.
So, please send it on through. And in the meantime, create a little momentum. Share it out to some people so they can go get some of the back episodes, maybe one of your favorite series or topics. And we would love that. And we can't wait to kick it back up again very soon.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.